You go to work on a Tuesday. You're just back from an approved medical leave. All approved, right? Legal, HR said all good, paperwork and approvals have been filled. You come back to a lonely calendar invite on your Google Calendar. You didn't plan for it, and now you're gone. This is what just happened to 26 people at Meta, or what they allegedly said happened. One of them was a scientist on a pregnancy leave. She got the notice 2 days before she gave birth that she was getting laid off as she was in this approved leave. Another one was a manager that 16 days into medical leave got laid off. And a third one says they were warned in advance. And this is crazy. They were warned. You take the leave, you'll be on the list. Here's the part where I want everyone to pay attention, because this could be you tomorrow, right? This might be an indicator of a future trend when it comes to layoffs, which is these folks that got laid off, they went to a federal court to stop it. And the judge said no. And his reasoning, and I want you to pay attention to this because I think we'll hear it more and more in 2026 and 2027, is that the workers couldn't prove exactly how the AI was used because, direct quote, they were not in the rooms where it happened. So these folks that got fired, like people when they get fired, they don't get access to the rooms, right? They didn't have access to the dashboard, training data. Certainly, they don't have access to the weights that determine, hey, if this person has a fever, that will get you closer to getting laid off in our score system. And that room where the decisions were being made allegedly has more to do with a data center, a server farm, that with 4 managers just talking back and forth. So Meta is using an opaque system to fire folks, and then basically there's no way to challenge it because there's no transparency in how this is happening.
That's crazy. I mean, just the idea that there was a room where it happened is almost false.
Yeah.
Like maybe there wasn't even a room. Maybe it was just a spreadsheet and the algorithm just looked through and picked people who, for some reason or another, probably an approved reason, were not present or were not as present in the data over the course of the last however long they were tracking, and then flagged them. The idea that people sat in a room and made a decision is maybe not even true.
Maybe. There's some details and I will go through them, but let's go through what we know, which is, like we predicted a few episodes ago, Meta performed 8,000 layoffs, which is roughly 10% of their
10%.
workforce, as they were having record revenue. So they were not laying off these people because they ran out of money. Basically, it's because they are moving 135 billion into AI infrastructure, because as we know, everybody's trying to hyperscale and have the biggest thing in the market. So they need to reallocate money. So people go out the window. Now, the thing they did before the layoffs, as we discussed, is that they install surveillance on the employees' computers. So they were logging keystrokes, mouse clicks, what they were checking, the browser history. Also, they had this dashboard, right, to see which folks were token maxing or not, so that meant if you were not using enough tokens, that definitely meant you were not being productive, right? Because as we know, productiveness is how much AI you use, not, for example, you and me sitting to discuss an issue, or maybe training a new person, or going through documentation to understand something. No, we should be asking AI for everything. So the Meta, and this is the other part where it gets a bit sketchy, is that the Meta HR leader, Doan, filed a declaration, which is, no, it wasn't an algorithm. Humans made these calls, right? On performance ratings and organizations charts. So this was all decided by humans. Now, these ratings that humans were using, though, they were more than likely, again, we don't know for sure until the lawsuit is done, but allegedly they were informed by this data. So if you think about it, the human pulled the trigger, but basically the decision was made by AI, right? When it was, look, let's say you're on a pregnancy leave. Well, what the system does is says, oh, Kate has not been productive for the last 3 weeks. We see her token usage plummeted. Kate goes up on the list of layoffs. So this is how they decided. This is how folks are getting laid off, in which seems to be something that definitely will not look good to people. So I wonder if Meta had anything to say about it?
Yeah, let's think about that, because the tone that they've been taking in the marketplace has been radically different than what you just told me. The fact that they're collecting these sort of secret signals on their employees and somehow making firing decisions based on them. You would not think that that was the headline that was up and live today. They have been on the AI optimism train. They have been leaning into trying to build back positive cultural feedback towards AI for the past month. And there's two pieces to this that I want to dive into, but just a warning, this may feel a bit cringe when you pair what you just told us about what they're doing internally with what they're talking about in the marketplace, what their comms plan is currently. So the first one is an ad that they rolled out on July 23rd across Instagram, YouTube. Basically, if it didn't land in your feed or in your Slack from one of your coworkers, then you're definitely not in one of our bubbles. But this is a 1-minute spot. It's similar to a lot of the commercials that we've seen, especially some of the ones we unpacked from the Super Bowl around how AI can enhance the human experience. But, I feel like it doesn't quite hit the beat. It says things like, call us optimists, call us dreamers, but we're betting on people and we like those odds. This is Meta. This is Meta, okay? This is the company that is embroiled in lawsuits for their products having harmed young people, which they are, by the way, losing at the current moment. And let's just play a little bit of it.
Some people will have you believe AI will make us less connected, that it's gonna leave us behind. We couldn't disagree more. Call us dreamers. Call us whatever the hell you want. But we're betting on people, and we like those odds. The future is for everyone.
When you boil this down, they're saying we're betting on people. And those 26 people that just filed a suit against them for having been laid off for having babies and being sick kind of goes exactly in the opposite direction.
Well, Kate, they said they're betting on people. They didn't say they're betting on your people. So joke's on you.
They're also betting on some other people. The first time that I heard one of these spots was in like a podcast I was listening to. And I literally have never done this before, but I backed up the podcast to make sure that I heard it correctly, because Meta has also launched a workforce academy. So this is a $115 million investment in a nationwide program in partnership with a number of skilled trade organizations to upskill people for the future of AI. So things like fiber optic cables, electricians, welders, right? All of the kind of blue collar labor that you need to build the data centers, to build the infrastructure for the future that Meta sees. They're on a mission to train people for this. They are working with associated builders and contractors. They're providing real credentials, real certifications. They're providing, tuition, lodging, airfare across all 50 states to go into places like Louisiana, Ohio, Indiana, Texas, and retrain yourself in these 4 to 5 week intensive tracks. I heard about this in a commercial, so they are also using this program to, again, like the other commercial that we said, to build back trust and enthusiasm in the effort to build AGI and build an AI driven future. So I personally think that, of the two, this one I like a little better because there's actually some material benefit going back to workers and workers here in the United States to, work on building out this infrastructure, training in new jobs that may help them in the future. But there is also a little irony here, because when we look at the first piece of what we talked about, they're really cutting back on that home office staff and doing it in a way that maybe is not the most upfront and the not most above board. So there is a little irony here as well.
Yeah, and I want to, sure, in theory, the training for trades looks amazing. They're forward thinking. But now, here's a few thoughts, right? Thought number one is, as all things with Meta, I don't think they're doing this. And I think you will agree, out of the kindness of their heart or because they're actually betting on people. They're just doing it because they need data centers. They need to build loads of them. And there's a labor shortage when it comes to those positions that they need to get these things done. So number one, they're just working to fix a business need, right? And right now, they can only use people. They cannot automate those things, which again, I could also, and this is more going into the fully dystopian tinfoil hat thing, but I would say, okay, they're done training on white labor work. What's the next frontier? As we see AI is trying to learn how to clean houses, through robotics and all of that. It's like, well, will they have to eventually wear devices that train on their work? So maybe 4 years from now, they're also getting laid off, because what I can see is that, they say they're betting on people unless they get pregnant, unless they get sick. Again, some of these folks that got laid off allegedly because of this algorithm, allegedly being the keyword. Again, some of them were receiving medical treatment through their health insurance that they go through work for very important diseases. And they lost that. So to me, when I hear we're betting on people as you're leaving employees, out to dry at probably the most vulnerable point of their lives, I'm just not buying it, especially because I have my own opinions of Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, I could kind of see myself being in the room when the decision was made to green light this campaign. And it does feel like the betting on people commercial and the workforce project are working hand in glove. But I just know myself, and I know that everyone in that room would roll their eyes at me because I'd say, I don't think we should do this. And, they'd say, why? This is so good for a brand. But it's good washing. It's trying to distract with a narrative of the good that they're doing in the world to cover up the bad. And it's disconnected. It's not like they're fixing the things that are broken. They're just shining a light to a positive future for whatever reason. Yep, it's good washing, whatever you want to call it. It's not a good strategy from a marketing standpoint.
I mean, I call it the marketing playbook for every AI company ever, because they all create the same ad with the kid asking questions like, is this flower gonna grow? So it's always the same bull with these AI companies, and this is right on brand.
Okay, so I love this question of what people are they betting on, right? Because they're definitely betting on their consumers. I mean, you don't even have to take the AI equation out of it. But Meta has built a billion-dollar business on turning people's data into dollars. So they are definitely betting on that continuing to happen. And it just does really strike a chord with me that this betting on people is their new tagline. They've been betting on our data for 2 decades, turning it into their profits. It's so rich.
It's very rich. And like you said, right, this is a company telling you we're betting on people. At the same time, they're using AI in a way that no one really knows how it's making these decisions to decide who loses their job. And my fear, as we've covered time and time and Slop work, is that every single corporation in the US will copy this model, right? Because one thing that happened when the judge said, no, you can't check the algorithm, is that once you're getting sued as a company, and Workday, I'm assuming, could do the same. So if we have any lawyers, I want to hear you in the comments, see if you have anything to say about this, because basically what they said is if Meta's lawyer tries to use the system to replicate what they're being sued about, basically this algorithm turns into electronic client privilege information. It cannot be shared in the lawsuit, which means we'll never know what that algorithm, how that algorithm is weighing decisions, etc. And I feel this is giving every company in the US a blank check to do whatever they want. And speaking of this, we have an episode that we created on Workday that has 81,000 views, more than 1,000 comments, talking precisely about this and how it affects your capabilities to get a new job. And actually, next week, we're going to follow up because we have an update on this case. And I know folks have been really interested in this video. So come back next week. And in order to do that, subscribe, like, tell Kate how awesome she is in the comments. And come back next week because we'll have a new episode on Workday. In the meantime, watch the one we already put together. Goodbye.